hope of the resurrection does give you the possibility of seeing your sister again. Number 3, he has promised to be a comforter to you in your time of need and give you strength and somehow sustain you through this, and not only sustain you, but use you to strengthen others who go through the same struggle. Professor Eleanor Stumpf of St. Louis University talks about what she calls the mirror of evil. In the mirror of evil and in the mirror of pain, you might see the reflection of the goodness that does come in these settings. And the only possible goodness is within the Christian theistic framework. You move out of that, and there is no other goodness that you can look for. It's just a given. She's gone. He will sustain you. He restores the life of the one who trusts in him, and he enables you to help meet needs of those who go through similar situations. I can assure you there's as much meaninglessness from those who've never endured such tragedy. But through this tragedy, I think God walks with you and strengthens you and sustains you. And it may be that you will find the kind of strength in this that many people will never see, except for the tragedy that God has entrusted you with to go through. If God doesn't exist, the question is a moot point, and there is no other way to respond to it other than that it just happened. I think I could give you the hope that Christ will strengthen you, sustain you, and be the restorer of life too, because he died and rose again to show you that in his own suffering, he did not conquer in spite of the dark mystery of evil, he conquered through it.
Question over here. Question over here. Go ahead.
Yeah, my first scenario is just kind of hypothetical, but would it be wrong for me if I was socially raised this way to come up and attack you? If that wasn't wrong in my society, I understand that, you know, that I could be arrested for that and whatnot, but there's laws made by lawmakers, and therefore my actions to you are morally set by those lawmakers, and therefore God is the same way with morals as the lawmakers are to laws. And without the laws, or without the lawmakers, then everybody would just be riotous and there would be no laws. So without God, there would be no morals.
Okay. Anybody on the panel? Dr. Craig?
Well, I think it's more for Dr. Liken.
I think so too, yeah. But he is big.
I've really, I addressed that somewhat before, that we ourselves are the makers of our morals. But I have a question that's related to this for my colleagues on the panel, and that is, if I know this is exceedingly unlikely, but if I managed to say something that persuaded them that God didn't exist, I'd like to know what's the first sin they have in mind. What is on their list that they aren't doing because they know God's up there and has made this list of things that are right and wrong?
I think you asked the wrong question. Because, first of all, by the way, I'm not sure your question's really been answered here, because are you satisfied with that, or do you want us to proceed?
No, I'm not real satisfied.
Okay.
Would it be wrong for him to attack you? Is that the question?
I think so. Yes, yes, it would be.
Let's narrow it down to laws and lawgivers and the need for laws.
Yeah, right. You'd either have a fight on your hands or see my back. I think it's wrong for you to attack me because of our society and as you say, the laws that we have. I mean, we have that particular thing. That's called assault and battery, and so we have embodied our moral thought in our law in this particular case. But not everything that is moral or immoral is in our laws. But we create all of them. We create them.
There is a difference between the moral law agency in human government and the way God works in the human heart. And I think that may implicitly answer Dr. Liken's question to us. When I came to know Christ, part of my struggle took me through a bed of suicide. I had no hope. I had no desire to live. I had no confidence in anything that I was capable of doing. And what God did in my life is not just changed what I do. He changed what I wanted to do. And there's a world of a difference when you serve one you love, who, and by the way, in the slavery question too, I think you ought to read the book of Philemon in the New Testament. Paul rescues a slave and sends him back to the person, Adam, and he said, I want you to take him now as your brother, and I'm sending him to you as my son. To change the laws of society doesn't change the hearts of society. God always went to the root of the problem. Laws get us, as we have seen and displayed these last few days, one of the few things we've agreed on here, that what's happened is that you can change things externally, but what God wants to do is change us in what we do. And that transformation and change is the work of God within a human life. And that's when he gives you a different perspective on both evil and pleasure, because you serve out of love, not out of a sense of fearing a judge.
Question from the internet for Dr. Mahatny.
Yes, for Dr. Mahatny from Robert at Auburn University. Christians believe that in Jesus' death on the cross, we see a transcendent personal creator demonstrating his love for humanity and displaying his judgment against human evil. Christians further maintain that this meaning of Jesus' death has been verified for all people by Jesus' resurrection from the dead. Have you examined the historical evidence for the resurrection, and what have you concluded about this central event of the Christian faith?
Well, why to me, actually? One thing is that I have not examined, I think the answer is very simple. I have not examined the historical validity of this evidence, and I have not examined or have not found any incentive from my own thinking and from within my own tradition to examine it, whether it has any lessons for me. So it falls outside the internal thinking process and from within the tradition from within which I think, which is the tradition of Indian thinking as well as the main line of Western philosophy.
Any other comments? Let's see if we can take another question here. Question from, somebody help me out here. Question over here.
Yes, my question is for Dr. Craig. Dr. Craig, I'm troubled by Dr. Mahatny's failure to go the final mile and identify a giver of the objective laws that he is willing to accept. I wonder how and you have investigated, Dr. Craig, and written on the historical evidence of Jesus' resurrection. What does the historical fact of the resurrection, how does that help you to establish or take comfort in a moral lawgiver, someone who has given us this objective morality for us to follow?
I think that we have an intuitive sense of many moral values, which is why the humanist, the atheist, the Christian alike all share many of the same values about the basic dignity of human beings and so forth. But on the other hand, there are areas of moral ambiguity. There are gray areas as well as areas of black and white. And in those areas, I think we need divine revelation. We need guidance from God as to what our moral duties are. Perhaps divorce would be an example that Dr. Lycan raised. This is something where perhaps we don't have natural intuitions, but that God has a plan for marriage and a certain way in which he wants this to be carried out. And so we need a revelation from God to tell us what God's will is on these areas of ambiguity. And I think that Jesus claimed to be the absolute revelation of God. He claimed to reveal God the Father to humankind. And the question that we as rational thinking people need to raise is there any good reason to think that Jesus of Nazareth was telling the truth, that he was who he claimed to be? Or was he just a deluded maniac? And I think in the resurrection of Jesus from the dead, we have, as it were, God's vindication of the radical personal claims that Jesus of Nazareth made to be the revelation of God, for which he was crucified.